The concept I'm here to discuss with you today is cultural appropriation, and I'll be doing this by looking at a painting. Cultural appropriation occurs when a dominant culture adopts elements of an oppressed culture and fails to use these elements in their intended circumstances. Rogers defines cultural appropriation as the use of a culture's symbols, artifacts, genres, rituals, or technologies by members of another culture, actions which are often viewed as offensive. While this does not negatively affect the dominant culture, then the minority are often left with the consequences of this, such as negative stereotypes being perpetuated, the history being misunderstood, and economic consequences. It is important that the level of awareness surrounding cultural appropriation be raised as a preventative measure to ensure that Indigenous peoples here and internationally are protected from the theft of their culture. Richard Bell, an Indigenous man from Charleville in Queensland, is the artist I have decided to analyse for this presentation. Bell is an artist and political activist who uses his art to express his opinions and thoughts on issues such as racism, stereotyping, and cultural appropriation. The artwork that I will be discussing, Scientia e Metaphysica, Bell makes a statement about cultural appropriation. The first element which hints at this is his powerful message in text, which reads, "Aboriginal art, it's a white thing." By placing this message in such a manner as to emphasize the text, Bell brings the issue of cultural appropriation to the center of his politically driven artwork. Though Bell appropriates other styles from the dominant culture, this is not cultural appropriation because he is from the minority culture. He does not have that power. It is also inferred with the mention of cultural appropriation that Bell is suggesting that non-Indigenous Australians often benefit from the traditional artwork and painting styles of Indigenous Australians. That is cultural appropriation. Cultural appropriation is harmful, and as a result, when using Indigenous artworks to teach or incorporating them in the classroom, it is important to make sure that we're not being tokenistic or culturally appropriating the culture in question. Harrison and Selwood detail instances of cultural appropriation in the course text. It is important that Indigenous art is thought of in more ways than simply dots and circles. Cultural appropriation puts at risk the origins of the paintings that Indigenous people hold in such high esteem. Because of this, when teaching through Indigenous art forms, it is absolutely imperative to consider whether one is culturally appropriating, so to avoid causing harm to the minority culture. As educators, we will be responsible to ensure that the elements of art we use in our classroom do not culturally appropriate. We need to create ways for our classes to engage with the content, understand it, and appreciate it. Richard Bell made clear his feelings towards cultural appropriation and the damage it can cause. Let his fiery artwork motivate us to avoid the misappropriation of cultures for our own gain. In light of this, I'll leave you with a few questions which I strongly encourage you to reflect on. 1. Have there been times you have culturally appropriated something because of a lack of awareness surrounding the subject? 2. What will you do as an educator to ensure your students are aware of these issues and the harm that they can cause?